Yeah, just tell me to sign that. Hey, so thank you again for coming, especially for our guests that arrived after I made my first speech. So thank you very much for coming. Joanna has a presentation to go through in a minute. So this is kind of a follow-up to the last development one we did over at the Legion in February about Kaivan and about some other development things that we've based on the success of that, we had intended to have quarterly meetings, some on development, some on other topics, this being the first one after that. So it is being recorded. If you have other people that you know of that might have been interested, so we're recording it. It'll be on our website later this week. And with that, I will turn it over to Joanna. Sorry, I guess depending what your thoughts are, because we have a small crowd, if there's questions as we go, then I think you're happy to talk about them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a fairly long presentation, but I think they're mostly slides that are sort of succinct and we can go through them. So yeah, absolutely questions when you have them is probably better than waiting. So thank you for coming, everybody. We were getting a little concerned that nobody would make it. But this is our next, like Michael said, I think, second sort of development education session. Slide. I'm Joanna Bowes. I'm the Director of Development Services. So our department is Building Department and Planning Department, and we work in conjunction with Environmental Services. Next slide. So basically, until fairly recently in the last several years, there hasn't been a lot of at least residential development in Perth. And so we're trying to take the opportunity to present information about development and discuss the opportunities it brings and also the challenges it brings. So tonight, our goal is to go through just sort of a brief overview of some different things listed here. One, an overview of the Lanark County Growth Study. It hasn't yet been approved, but it should be approved by the county, or they're expecting it to be approved by the county by the end of June. I was going to give some insight into provincial legislation, a look at the types of development and available lands. We have, in the last several years, approved various developments at council, and so we're just going to take a look at where we are at with those, the status of those, and then take a quick look at the planning application review process, and then answer any questions you may have. And like I said before, feel free to answer the questions throughout. Feel free to help yourself to coffee and Timbits. Next slide, please. So a little while ago, the county started the Lanark County Growth Study. It looks at a number of things, including populations and where they're moving from. Are they moving from, Toronto and coming into the county? Are they moving out of the county? Where are they going? Where are people working? Are they traveling into Ottawa? Are they traveling to Kingston? Are they working here? And it's sort of a study of the county as a whole. Next slide, please. So their study looks up to, from this point until 2051. So just Perth specific, we're looking at a projected population. We're currently at about 6,500 people. And by 2051, the expectation is that we'll grow to about almost 11,000. So 10,630. That increase in Perth specifically is expected to account for about 10% of the county's growth. We'll also see our growth rate increase from 0.3% to 1.6%. So right now our growth rate is actually very low. Places like Ottawa are at probably about 2.5. And so we're looking at about 1.6. And we are the second fastest growing municipality since 2021 with the most significant high density growth that's on the books. Hasn't been formally constructed, but on the books. In terms of job, we're looking at a 75% increase. And remember, this is up until 2051. A 75% increase in what's called population related jobs. So jobs that serve an increased population. So hospital workers, grocery store clerks, jobs like that, and a 25% increase in industrial related jobs. The reason we're expecting that growth in the industrial sector is because in Lanark County, Perth has the highest concentration of industrial lands as compared to all the other municipalities. So total by 2051, we're expecting about 410 industrial jobs, 290 commercial jobs, 220 work from home, and 220 work from home jobs. Next slide, please. So we'll take a quick look at provincial policy. There have been significant changes over the last several years in provincial policy, in my opinion, not necessarily for the better, but we'll take a quick look and sort of explore that. And again, if you have questions, feel free to ask them. So I've put up this slide, I think, at any education session I've tried to do. I find it very helpful. It talks about all the different things that generally are encompassed in a community or things that we worry about and who's responsible for them. So you can see that there's Lanark County, they're responsible for some things. The province is responsible for a whole host of things. And then the municipality is responsible for, I'd say probably the bulk of them. In the red circle up there, you can see that land use planning, which is planning for development, is the responsibility of all three: the province, the county, and the town. So it's most certainly a collaborative effort. There are other agencies that are also involved: Conservation Authority, school boards, Bell, Hydro, those types of agencies that we also talk to, obviously, as well as the public and council and other staff. Next slide, please. So just very briefly, when we get a planning application in for anything, whether it's a severance or a subdivision or a little minor variance, we have to look at it in the context of several different types of policies or legislations, the main one being the provincial policy statement. It's now called the provincial planning statement. Sorry, I misspoke. Provincial planning statement from 2024. The province sort of lays out things that we should look at that are considered important, and they direct our lower tier documents as to what is important, whether it's environment or water quality, employment, mining, those types of things. So then we also take, we take a project and we look at it against that provincial planning statement. And then we also look at it at the county level, at the county sustainable official plan, which sort of mirrors in a way the provincial policy statement, and then our official plan, and then our zoning bylaw. So the official plans are more high level documents that just talk generally about sort of motherhood statements about what we'd like to see or where we want to go. And right now, Perth, if you haven't known, we've just sort of approved a red line draft of our official plan to go to the county for approval. And then we approve it against the zoning bylaw, which are actual regulations in terms of what uses can be in a particular area, or setbacks, lot coverage, things like that, that make land use functional. Next slide, please. So since 2021, there has been at least what I could count 13 legislative changes that affect land use planning, not specifically the provincial, not specifically planning, but because planning is a whole host of different things. It affects heritage and environment and development charges. There's just a number of different acts that planning refers to, and they have all been adjusted in numerous ways by the province. So in a lot of ways, the planning department's everywhere at county level, any municipality, we're trying to catch up to all of these just continual changes. So some of these things that have happened, just to list a few, are the removal of third-party appeal rights. So it used to be if someone brought in an application, it came before council and council approved it. There could be someone from the public or another body that could appeal it and say, no, we don't want it. And it could go to the Ontario Land Tribunal. That has now been revoked. There is no third-party appeal. The only person who can appeal is the owner or applicant, or in some cases, agencies like Hydro. Site plan control is one type of planning application that deals with functionality of sites. When something is built, we collect securities to make sure it's done right. We deal with things like garbage, snow removal, lighting. So the province has now said if there's anything being built under 9 residential units, planning doesn't get to comment. It just goes straight to building permit. Conservation authorities have been stripped of a number of their powers, and now can only review for hazard lands and floodplain. So like safety measures essentially, rather than water quality or endangered species or other items like that. There used to be a, yes. No, so yeah, anything under 9 units just goes straight to building permit for residential development. That being said, we have tried to encompass some of the things that the planner would usually look at into the building department purview. We can't get all of it in there, but the main, like some of the main items be like grading and drainage that the building department can still sort of review and look at. But we can't cover items like lighting, or snow storage, things like that, that are critical to the functionality of a site. And then we don't have the ability to collect securities. So the securities are collected, so if the project goes astray or something happens, the town can use those funds to finish the site or correct things. But we don't have the ability to do that now. So if a site that has under 9 units gets started, not finished, the town now cannot walk in and finish it. It's just remains. That is an example, yes. Correct. Yeah, if there had been a site plan control agreement there, we would have been able to lay out specific conditions of how we wanted to see things happen. And then we would have collected securities for all of those specific items we wanted to see done. And if it stopped, the town would have had the power to be able to go in and finalize those items. In this case, or any case like this throughout Ontario, we no longer have that ability. So there's also been a lot of environmental rules sort of changed to make it easier for building housing to occur, which is, as we know, a provincial priority. And recently the Municipal Act was changed under what's called the Strong Mayors Act, which allows mayors, if they think it's of a provincial authority, to sort of push items through. You know, there are specific regulations within that, but generally it gives mayors the power to get development done in the way that needs to be done. And it certainly gives province more power to sort of come down and just allow things to pass through. Next slide, please. The province, I believe, we've decided that we told the province we don't want strong mayor powers, and they basically said, too bad, you have them. And so we do. The province is the authority, right, above us. Okay, so the next section is talks about types of developments and available lands. Next slide, please. So there's 2 different types of development. There's probably actually more than that, but the ones that we're seeing here in Perth are infill developments and greenfield developments. So right now within the town of Perth, we're seeing a lot of medium to high density infill. So what infill basically means is there's land that's already been developed. And so it's either underutilized, it's just vacant space that never got developed, perhaps because of contamination, perhaps because it's an awkward shaped lot. There could be any number of reasons, or there are some houses on it and developer might buy a couple of lots, take the houses down and put up something of more density. This is the type of development that the province and planners tend to encourage because you get more density in area, but you get the same amount of services. So you don't have to necessarily change pipes in the ground. The garbage truck goes by the same road, the snow plow goes down the same road. There's no new added infrastructure to care for or maintain. So infill generally is good according to the province and planners, but it is difficult because the neighborhood is already there. And then all of a sudden, we're just dropping something that seems incongruent to what everybody's used to. And so it often causes local disruption. And we'll go over some of those examples later on. The second type of development we're seeing in Perth is greenfield expansion. And that's where you literally take an empty field or an empty area and develop it. So you have to add roads, you have to have, add the pipes in the ground, then they have to build houses. And so it often causes destruction of habitat, it causes increased costs on the municipality, but it's often also seen as less disruptive because there's nobody there. So I guess that sort of sums up both of those. An example of greenfield expansion would be essentially be Perthmore subdivision or the Kaivan subdivision. So they just have an area of land and they just develop there. Next slide, please. So the main place where I believe infill is probably going to happen is the downtown core. So that picture is just obviously the downtown core of Perth. So we're starting to see slowly, at least since I've been here for 3 years, and we've seen a lot of infill developments proposed, and we're working through the process. So we're basically finding increased density in the form of apartment buildings. Next slide, please. There are some areas that have so far been untouched, but are available for development. So there's a significant ability to develop north of Highway 7. So right now, there's a whole lot of commercial lands along 7. So you see it, you have Canadian Tire and McDonald's, the Canadian Tire gas, the GM dealership, that's going up is an example. But there's also, I don't know if you can really tell from the picture, but there's a whole lot of land behind that. And there was a master plan in place for north of Highway 7. If you go on later, you can click on anything that's underlined and it will take you to that document if you have interest in that. And so the town has sort of planned for how we would like to see that develop. So the top is residential, closer to the highway is commercial. There's some roads proposed. And I have development has begun. I don't mean that in a very specific sense. It's not like we've seen applications or development in the back half of the north of 7, but we've seen, and we'll go through this again later, but facelift of Canadian Tire, the development of GM. There's another proposal for a 7-unit little mall. And so that's sort of the beginning of the development of that area, I would suspect. And then we're also having the redevelopment of Highway 7 by the Ministry of Transportation. That's supposed to occur about 2027-ish. And so generally when that happens, you start to see additional development sort of come into play.
It is within the boundaries of Perth. I'm not sure at what point it was added. Long ago. I'm not sure, Judy, if you recall, Mayor Brown. So some time ago. Up to Blueberry Creek. Yeah, I'll just pull up a map here. I believe it's across, or up to Drummond Concession 4, is that too far?
Might be a little.
Yeah, so somewhere kind of along the creek line here. And then it goes over to 511 on this side, and then just up on the other side of the meadows on the east side.
It's
Ju-
not.
Yeah.
It's not yet. So that's part of that plan. So if you follow the link that's in the slide, it will give you sort of information as to what we're anticipating. And then this year, we're also going to do an infrastructure master plan for the town proper, not just for this section, but for everywhere. That'll help guide where we want to see that happen.
Well, there's an easier map. So there's the boundary. So just south of Blueberry Creek, actually, and straight across includes the cemetery. And then on the east side goes out quite far.
Okay. Yes, sir. There is some town-owned land.
The town owns about 20 acres up in this, I believe this field here. Possible recreation facility sites, a pool and arena, and second water tower. No.
Okay, next slide. Okay, I think perhaps I'm going to assume that we've all heard the Western Annex, Western Annex lands, as that's where Kaivan is generally located. But there are other lands around that that are still part of the Western Annex lands. So the Sail Barn lands and some other lands in that area. So there are some other lands open and remaining that can be developed. There is, just like I talked about, the North of Seven plan, there is an infrastructure master plan for the Western Annex lands as a whole, and they're available there. And then additionally, there is a cooperative project between Tay Valley Township and Perth to develop the Arch Group is developing a 160-bed long-term care home. So everything was approved, planning and building through Tay Valley, but Perth Services crossed the boundary. So they've been working in conjunction with our environmental services team to have that development move forward. And I believe construction has begun on that. I believe it's just the servicing so far. Next slide, please. And then we have industrial lands that are for sale. The town of Perth owns them, and we're trying to develop industrial or business park sort of area. They're on Warren Crescent, Rogers Road, and Industrial Drive. And so they are for sale, and we can configure them in sort of whatever way necessary for if anyone is interested in industrial lands. And they are zoned industrial class 1 and 2. Next slide. The ones we have don't require cleanup, but there are some that are privately owned that would require cleanup. They would only require cleanup if they became a sensitive land use. If it's just industrial for industrial, then you don't require cleanup. So there's a few things we have to think about when we're looking at new developments. A key consideration is particularly with municipal infrastructure. When we're looking at a development really of any size, but particularly the larger ones, we look at capacity. Is there capacity to handle the waste that comes from them? Is our waste site sufficient? Do we need to expand it? Is our lagoon sufficient in size to deal with that? We've just received a $4 million grant. Oh, sorry, that was exaggerated, $2.9 million grant to add another cell to help with that. But we have to also look at traffic flow, consider traffic flow within the town, emergency response, those types of things. Municipalities are required to meet minimum provincial standards. So we look at development, we have to be sure that regardless, we have to meet those minimum standards. And then the next thing to consider is the more people you get into town, the more things they're gonna be looking for, like maybe an additional pool, or there's more roads to plow. So you need staff to maintain, the pool, the arena, to plow your streets. And so when we look at that, we have to consider, how do we move forward? How do we get these staff and equipment and infrastructure every time we add something? Next slide, please. So the planning review process, we'll go over that quickly now, and it's sort of fairly general. But if you have questions about this, I'm open to it. Next slide, please. So this is another one I try to put in front of everybody all the time. And it's just that this is like a typical planning process. So there are a variety of planning applications you can go through, and they're all for different things. So minor variance, site plan, zoning, official plan, consent. That probably wasn't all of them, but that's sort of another discussion for another day. But generally, there's a process that each one of them goes through, and they all start off with what's called a pre-consultation. So that's where a developer comes in and meets with our team. They meet with fire, building, planning, engineering, and say, I've purchased this land. Hopefully it's before they purchase the land, actually, but depending. And they propose a development, either residential, commercial, industrial, whatever it is they want to do. And we sit down with them and we talk it through, like, what studies will you need? What do you have to be cognizant of when you're developing this property? What are the parameters or zoning requirements for development? What processes do you have to go through? And then they take our list of what we're asking them to do, and they take it to a different set of professionals to get those studies and drawings done. And then they submit an application to the town. And then we have 10 days to deem it complete or incomplete. If it's incomplete, they go back, they have to complete it. If it is complete, we proceed to do a notice to the public where you see it on the paper or on our website saying, they're usually a bunch of jargon, and I apologize for that. It's Planning Act requirement, but it will usually just generally say, this is the location. This is generally what the proposal is. There's going to be a committee of the whole meeting about it. And then we actually have the public meeting. So there's 20 days between the notice and the public meeting when the planning department collects the comments, and we have to draft a report, include the comments, and it gets heard before the public, at which point a decision is made. It goes to council for approval. There are some cases for official plan or subdivision or condominiums where it has to go to the County of Lanark for approval. They're the approval authority for those things. Once there's approval, then we draft whatever agreement it is, a site plan agreement, a subdivision agreement, a condominium agreement. Once that's done, it's registered on a deed, and then it goes to get its building permit. The one comment I will make, and I think it's probably the thing that's most frustrating to the public, is that the site plan control agreement, which is the one we talked about at the beginning, that talks about functionality of the site. Where does the lighting go? Where does the garbage go? Where is the snow? Is there parking? Those ones are actually not open for public debate. They just get looked at and reviewed by staff and then approved by the planning department. And so that's why it's very important for the public to be involved at the higher level, when we have an official plan review, or when we have a zoning bylaw review, or when there's a zoning application that comes to committee. The planning department needs to hear all those comments then, so we can take them into consideration when we go to do the site plan. Because at that point, the public is not involved. If you didn't get involved in the
Because if it's a specific, proposal, how is the public going to know what to speak to if they were speaking to the other documents?
It's a fair comment, and the way it sort of works is we have all these motherhood statements from the province and then the official plan and then the zoning, but they all flow from top down. So for example, I'm going to use trees. Lots of people are upset when trees get cut down. Totally fair. I'm right on board with you. So the official plan might have a statement that says something like, for every 3 trees of a certain size you remove, 1 tree of a certain size must be planted. Then when I review a project where someone might take a 2-acre property cleared of trees, I have the ability in the official plan to say, hey, you've cleared all these trees. Now you need to provide me with X number of trees for that site. So when the site plan comes about, I can enforce that in some meaningful way. And we can have specific details in a zoning bylaw that speak to setbacks or specific requirements. You can even have things in it like garbage enclosures shall be, shall look like this and be of a certain size or whatever. Ours currently doesn't have that, but you can get more restrictive, but we need, public comment to help get those things through. So it gives the planner the ability to, when they're at the table by themselves or with the development group, the ability to take what's written in those documents and apply them to the site plan. And it's always good, like, whoever lives in the area of that area that's being developed, they know the neighborhood best. So providing comments never hurts, on anything like that. So if you come in when there's a zoning bylaw amendment and say, hey, I have a real problem with this drawing they've done here and here's why, it's maybe something that highlights to the planner, it's something I'd better look at or consider.
Still required to hand out notices to surrounding properties advising them of the change?
Good question. It's not required for a site plan control agreement, nor is it required for a plan of subdivision. But it is required for zoning.
Not required.
A public notice is not required, or a public meeting is not required for a plan of subdivision. And it never was required for a site plan, but it is required for zoning.
So they used to put up the notices and say. Yeah, and is that, not.
Now they've changed the regulation to electronic notice, like on a website. Potentially, yes. Yeah. Sorry, yes, I was being not diligent there. There is a requirement to send notice to the neighbors, depending on the type of application. It would either be 60 meters or 120 meters. If it was an official plan amendment, then the county would put it in the newspaper. And then anything else is either not required to be noticed or is noticed on the website. And actually now I haven't got my head fully wrapped around it, but the province is now finagling minor variances so that they may be able to just go through. But I would have to get more specific details into that. So that's another thing they're sort of doing to build more housing faster. Okay, next slide, please. So, things that we have to consider very high level when you're reviewing plans. So when I have a plan in front of me, some things I consider is what is the official plan designation and does the proposal fit with it? So the whole point of, or not the whole point, but a lot of the issues are the uses compatible? I continue to use something like you wouldn't want a daycare in a floodplain, or you wouldn't want a hospital beside an industrial site. They're just not compatible uses. So when I sit down with a plan, I have to say, does it make sense use-wise? Does it fit in the official plan designation? If the answer is no, then there's the opportunity to have an official plan amendment, but it has to be supported through another planner giving rationale as to why it works or not. If it fits, great. Then you look at the zoning designation. Does it fit in the required zone? Is it a house being built in residential, or is someone trying to build a house in a commercial zone? You know? And then if it doesn't fit, are we willing or able to make it fit? That's what a zoning bylaw amendment is. It doesn't, it's maybe sort of works, so let's try to make it work if we think it makes logical sense. And then, are there appropriate services? Are the pipes in the ground there? Do we need to upgrade them? Is there sufficient, like I was talking about, sufficient capacity? Depending on the level of what the proposal is, it obviously varies. Another major one we're seeing a lot of that's sort of talk of the town is there safe access? Is there a fire route? Is it safe for people to be there? And then, you know, we make a list of what studies do you need. So depending on the site, there's different things on every site. It might be such that we would ask for, and they get it wrong, I think it's geotechnical report, that's an engineering report. You know, can the structure be supported by the ground on which it sits? Do we need an environmental impact statement? Are there endangered species there that we need to be concerned about? Is it beside a heritage building? Should we be considering that? There's all sorts of different studies that we can ask the developer to do to be sure that it's all in sync and we have the information we need to make a good, solid decision. And then we get down to the minor functional details of things like they keep harping on snow and garbage and sufficient parking and lighting and signage and all that stuff that ensures the site will function correctly. The thing I see most commonly in site plans is the developers will put the parking spaces in, but there's no room for the last two cars to back up because there's no hammerhead. So things like that seem really obvious that you could miss if you didn't have the years of experience. The first thing I do is look for a hammerhead. Is it there? And then you sort of like redline the drawing and send it back to the developer. Like you're going to need to, that's a really common one, but it speaks to the functionality of the site. The cars can't back up anywhere. How are they getting out? Right? Next slide, please. So we've had a lot of developments been approved over the last several years since I've been here and quite frankly, before me as well. And we're starting to see a bit of construction. So I was just going to go through the ones that have been approved and this. Yeah.
There were 7,000 square foot warehouses being permitted to be developed off Rio Grande Road. All of these things were taken into account, but then they could go to the OLT and the decision is made by the OLT.
That is correct. So the question was, you could have a development, any development really where the planner looks at all those things and considers all those things and then makes a decision, and then the developer goes to the Ontario Land Tribunal. That is absolutely something that is able to happen on any development anywhere. And then essentially both parties have to present how the development does or does not meet provincial policy, official plan, zoning bylaw, all those documents. And then often there's sort of backup statements or backup information that has to be provided through expert witness testimony. And then ultimately the decision lies with the Ontario Land Tribunal. Okay, so we'll start looking at these developments. Are y'all still with me? Do I need to move faster, slower? We're good? Okay. So I'm starting off with some of the ones that have been completed, and this started, I'm doing the ones that I've worked on or am still working through. So the first one of the first ones that hit my desk when I got here was sort of a upgrade facelift for the Canadian Tire. But they were asking for some, well, actually what they were asking for was an increased space for the garden center that they have. But when you look at a site plan, where do you put the garden center? Here's where we're going to put it. Oh, look, you're losing parking spaces. So there's always a trade-off. There's always a trade-off between parking spaces and green space, or parking spaces and something. So we had to go through and confirm the parking space count based on the zoning bylaw, and then they had to provide a rationale as to why it was okay to have less. There was a whole bunch of history to the file that's really at this point, irrelevant, but we brought it to council, it was approved. And now there was building permits issued. The facelift has been done on Canadian Tire. They now have a larger garden center. And I mean, my hope is it's still functioning well, because that was the intent. So that one is completed. And I just want to point out some of these are along 7. So I was talking about Highway 7, sort of north of 7, sort of starting. And this is why I'm saying that, because I'm starting to see things move along Highway 7. Next slide, please. So the next one was Rental Village. It's now completed. They had a smaller building, and then they merged 2 lots together and put an addition on, added some parking spaces as required by the zoning bylaw, did some plantings and that sort of thing. And then they built it. We released their securities, and it's there now. Status completed. Next slide, please. The GM dealership. This is probably a big one. This was really controversial in my mind, specifically because of the vast amount of parking that was there. But we did go through council. We went through zoning bylaw amendment. We then went through site plan control agreement. We issued the building permits. And so the building permits are issued. They are obviously constructing. A little bit later on down the road, we received what's called a red line application, where they just want to change a couple little things. They wanted to add a sign and change around some landscaping. So the building permit's issued. They want to do a couple little changes. So actually, that's actually in the process now. Building can continue because they are very minor, but they are working through a red line site plan control application. Next slide, please. 46 to 48 Industrial Road, that's the RK Porter building. This one is also another interesting one, where they had a small building. They came and asked for a larger addition, which was approved. We did a site plan control agreement that got signed and registered. We collected securities. They started building it. And then they came back not long ago and said, now they have a lot beside them. And they said, we want to merge these 2 lots together. So we had to go through a severance process with the County of Lanark to merge the lots. And now they've asked to do lost the word, but like a canopy structure on the remainder for sort of storage. And so we're in the process now of doing a site plan control agreement to ensure that all of that matches. They have the appropriate space and the landscaping and parking and all that stuff. I actually, the status is changed as of today. I issued the site plan and it was signed. So I imagine we'll be getting building permits in the near future. Next slide, please. So 125 Wilson Street West, this was, I think, a pretty big one for the town by EcoBuild. It was a proposed mixed-use development. It is 63 units, proposed 63 units, 20 of which are affordable, and it's environmental friendly construction. This was an interesting one because I'm very pro mixed use. So you have residential on the upper floors and commercial on the bottom floors. It makes for a really good community feel, particularly in the area. Sorry? 125 Wilson Street. It's across from the mall, a sort of in that area. Yeah, there's a map. Yeah, wait, Michael can show you on a map. So they did, this is another infill, where they consolidated 4 lots. They've demolished some buildings. And now they're just at the stage where they're doing soils tests and stuff.
Sort of here, right?
It's no down.
The one with the yellow fence all around. That's-
The one with the yellow fence around it. Four, I believe. It's been a while since I've looked at it. Yeah. It's really positive project. They did have to go through an official plan amendment with the county and a zoning bylaw amendment because they're taking up a lot of the space on the lot. And there's just some like variances they needed for parking and things. They also need a zoning amendment to create a whole new sort of zoning, like a special, it's called a special exception zoning, where you allow for a specific thing for that lot. Because Perth currently doesn't allow for mixed use. So that's something that will change in our next zoning bylaw proper. But they went through that. And so the town is currently reviewing the proposal. We've drafted a site plan control agreement, but we are waiting. Demolition permits have been issued and demolition has occurred. We're waiting for some additional information by the developer before we can just finalize that agreement. So that's the status of that one. But that's a good example of infill, and it's a good example of appropriate use of land where you have like the mall close by and the commercial is still like on this building, but it's also surrounded by residential areas. And of course, there's affordable housing and environmental stuff dealt with as well. So that's significant. But yeah, it's 63 units, 20 of which are affordable. So I believe, if I'm correct, that is sponsored by Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation and the county.
Sure, they were involved in this one.
Okay, we'll with CMHC for sure. Okay, next slide, please. So the next one, and I think the next quite a few I'm going to present are all infill lots that have been approved through council. This one is like medium to high density. It's at 55 to 57 Drummond Street East. It's an 18-unit apartment building. 2 of them have accessible units. In this case. Sorry?
Just south of Craig Street?
Yes. Yeah, sorry, there is a map here but I guess it's not overly visible, but it's, yeah, Craig and Drummond. At any rate, this one, there was a structure there that was removed to build this larger apartment. So in this case, there is a site plan issued and we have a partial building permit released for the foundation and for the services. So I would say in the next couple of days, we'll have the full building permit. There has been some work on that site as well. They're allowed to dig. They're just not allowed to pour foundations until such time as a building permit is in place. So that's sort of where we're at with that one, but you'll start to see that go up. Next slide, please. Okay, this one is another interesting sort of positive story. 79 Wilson Street West. It's an infill. This is sort of what I was talking about at the very beginning, where I said infills are really positive. They use the same services. The garbage truck goes by the same, but it can be a challenge for the community around. So this one, the developer has tried to be very conscious of the streetscape. And so they're leaving the front house at 79 Wilson Street up, but turning it from 2 units to 4 units. And then behind, they're adding a 36 unit apartment for a total of 42 units. This is a cooperative housing model, and it's funded through CMHC. So at this stage, it was approved by council under zoning bylaw. And they're in the process of going through site plan control. There are, for the most part, just some minor issues we're working through, and some grading, the grading and drainage is what the biggest concern is presently. It is an area that is known to have a pond on it, and so there's a sort of community around it that we have to sort out how that's gonna function. But we are working towards that, and hopefully we'll have a positive resolution to that. Next slide, please. No, this is Linden Co-housing. We'll get to the other one. But this is, I think this is Linden Housing. Linden is the name. Linden Co-housing. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Sorry, co-op, Linden Co-op for those online. No, yeah, it's down from Harris.
We need a river act.
Yeah, I did. I actually thought about that, and I thought it was gonna take up so many of the slides. There wasn't gonna be room for the words. But this will be available, and I mean, we can see if we can add some pictures or something, if that would be helpful. All right, so yeah, that's being funded through CMHC, the majority of it. 85 Wilson Street was another one that's come to council. 16 unit apartment building. It's also infill, an example where a house was taken down. This might be the one you were talking about where it was kind of a derelict looking house. It's they passed a zoning amendment like quite a while ago. I don't have the date, but I feel like it was a year or so ago. And so it got passed, and now it's just nothing's happened. We haven't received a site plan application, building permits. Yeah, so yes, it has been sold. Yeah. So we'll wait and see what happens with that. It's a good question. The way this typically works is if they sell it, they could sell it to an owner who wants to do exactly what is proposed, and then they have sort of a slam dunk, it's already been approved and we're just going to build it. That's possible. Or the owner could buy it, say, that's not what I want to do at all. Forget it. I'm going to do something else. And then they would have to potentially come back to council for a zoning amendment. Or they might come up with something that says, hey, I don't want 16 units, I want 9. And I don't have to go through planning. I'm just going to get a building permit. So any number of things could happen. We just don't know at this stage. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a definite case of infill. It's on a irregular shaped lot. The way I'm going to try to explain this is it was all owned by one owner at one time. And, oh, actually the map is on the next one. There was a lot owned by one owner, and that owner kept a portion of the property and sold the remainder to a different developer. So yeah, this is on this slide, there's this weirdy shaped lot. And at the top half of that lot, on the other slide, the developer for just that little small section is proposing 2 16-unit apartment blocks. And they've been approved through zoning. And at that stage, at the same time, on the next slide, Michael, please, the land got sold to another developer who is proposing 4 apartments with a total of 104 units. So we're looking at, you know, almost 150 units in this area. It's, yeah, so yeah, so there's 4 buildings that I've tried to outline in red, although some of the red turned black. I don't know why. So that's 104 units in 4 apartments. And then that top space that's shaded in gray is the other original owners' 2 apartments with 16 units in them. Clear as mud. So this one's difficult. There's a lot of things to consider on this one. Safe access, noise from the rail line, which is right there. Safety berms, right? And the other thing about it is because it's 2 different developers, but it's sort of almost like it's 2 lots, but they're together, as you can see. The servicing plans for all the pipes and all the access and the roads and everything are shared. So one can't really move forward without the other because they're each dependent on the other to make things function in totality. So this is an exceptionally complicated one, but we've received a site plan application for the bottom one, which is the one that has to go because that's where the majority of the servicing is. And so we're moving forward, reviewing those studies. And then additionally, there are quite a few trees on that lot. Many of them are dead and posing a threat. So we've issued a tree cutting permit to the developer, but only for those trees that are posing a health and safety risk. The others are staying up. Like most of them, the majority of them will be removed, but I'd like to keep them up there as long as possible. It's also possible that the trees could be noise attenuation for the train. And so we're just waiting on getting those studies looked at, but the ones that are causing health and safety issues are permitted to come down. Yes. Yes. It's a very good question, and I'm going to be really honest, and you're probably not going to like it, but there are bylaws in place. Like the county has a bylaw about tree cutting, but I believe it's for like a very large piece of property, that they would have to get permission for that. Perth, obviously I've read it and looked at it, but I'm losing it now, but I think it's like an acre. If it's over an acre, we can give some sort of control. If it's under, you know, yeah, we do ask for in many cases, tree conservation plans where we ask the developer to go out and get a tree conservation plan, and it lists this tree, this is the type of tree, this is how big it is, it's healthy. These ones are not healthy, they can come down. If I go out to the site and I feel like that might be a bit suspect, for lack of a better word, I'll get it peer reviewed. And I won't allow cutting down until I'm confident that it makes sense. That being said, I've worked in many municipalities where it's easier to ask for forgiveness later. So developers will come in, clear cut everything, and then come into me and say, oh, I want to do a whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, you're going to need a environmental impact statement. You're going to need a tree conservation report. And they're like, well, the trees are gone. I have been known in the past to where I had the official plan policy behind me. I don't currently, but where I did have it behind me, where I've gone to a Google map and sort of, quite frankly, just try to figure out what trees of a certain size and how many were taken down. I've called the developer and I said, I suspect you've taken this many trees of this size down. You need to then, like in your subdivision agreement, you will put up, as per this official plan, this many. And I've got no argument. I will do that, and I'm not afraid to do that, but I'm also not an arborist, so for me to do that, it's a bit touch and go, but, I think it's worth fighting for, I think is what I'll say. Anyway, so that's where we are at with that. Next slide, please. 20 Robinson Street, this was a project brought forward by the County of Lanark. It was, they received a grant to allow for the construction of tiny homes that were affordable housing on Robinson Street. So it was immediately adjacent their other homes. So this is 2 affordable housing units with the potential for a third. I will say this is probably not the highest and best use of land, but they did have a grant. They went through a zoning bylaw amendment, and because it was under 6, they didn't need to go through site plan. And a building permit has been issued, so we'll hopefully see those tiny homes in the near future. Next slide, please. So this is, I think, the one that you guys were talking about before, where CHIP, I'm sorry, I should know what that's short for, but where CHIP had sort of come to the town looking for lands on which to build an affordable housing project. I can tell you, I literally went through 150 pieces of town-owned property to see which ones would be acceptable and able to handle this. And this was the only one available. It's within the Perth Works setting. So for those who don't know Perth Works, from what I understand, historically, the town decided to develop an area sort of as a condominium subdivision type thing. It was gone to go through RFP, and then ended up just being built sort of piecemeal, like a lot built or a lot severed and then a house built on it, and it was sort of built out over time. There are there's actually 3 lots left, but one of them council sold him at a nominal fee to CHIP at Carebridge. And they've been funded through the county and through CMHC. And we're looking at getting 15 affordable housing units constructed there. So there's been a conditional building permit issued. And it's conditional on final approval of a site plan. So that's an unusual way to do things. Usually you have to do site plan first and then get the building permit. But because of time crunches with CMHC, we issued them a foundation only permit so they can build a foundation, but they can't go any further until they get their site plan approved. And that was in order to be able to receive that funding for the affordable housing. So we are currently doing a final review of their site plan. Next slide, please. I think this might be the last one. Another infill, the 6060B Drummond Street West, quite close to the tracks. There will be a removal of, I want to say 2 structures to make way for a 25-unit apartment building. So they've been through the pre-consultation all the way up, and we are just in the process of completing site plan control for their signature. Next slide, please. Questions. We've done questions throughout, but if anyone has any other questions. Yes, sir. It's close. It is,
Just north of the tracks, almost right across from Perkins Boulevard,
yeah.
south of Dane's Place.
Oh, yep. That's not my radar because it's not going through planning, but there is a proposal at 23 Welland, which is very close to the eco-built mixed use building. And it's for a 6-unit apartment. And currently we're just going through some technical planning stuff in terms of um, simply put, just technicalities so that the building permit can, go through. Yes.
Talk about, giving, talking about what jobs are and projected to be, like, I don't know if you did that quickly, but I didn't catch it. I mean, how many people, say, 2051 and for 11,000 people, how many will be committing to Ottawa, how many going to Casey, how many can?
Yeah, I don't have all, this is like basically a slide. There's I mean, it's a huge document. So it's on the Lanark County website to look at, but essentially the message is we're growing in population. We're gonna see a lot of infill. We're gonna see a lot of greenfields development. And because of that, we're gonna see an increase in jobs, particularly the industrial sector, in comparison to everywhere else. So what I have is an additional 410 industrial jobs, 290 commercial jobs, and 220 work from home jobs is what is listed in that. Yeah, the study gets a lot more specific, and I wouldn't pretend to know all the details without opening up and reading it. I think what we're seeing is a lot of people coming in from, like Toronto or Kingston, both retired, but also families who, younger families, but who have the ability to work from home. So they're like, why would I live in Toronto with those expenses when I can come to a small town and live here and maybe commute to Toronto once a week, right? And the same with Ottawa. So I think we're seeing a shift in thought and how things get played out, but there will obviously always be commutes out as well. Yes.
In terms of population. Or is this, does it just happen? Does it just be rely on the developer to effectively say, graduate work to what we need?
I follow you. Because it's private land, generally speaking, we don't have a say. Like they just say the market wants this, and therefore this is what we're going to build. Right. That's not to say that I can't say to them, funny, that's not what I'm seeing here. Here's what I'm seeing. And we have a healthy debate back and forth that's happening right now with a development where the belief is that apartments just aren't going to fly in Perth. I just would like to direct you to what we've just seen, right? Like that's, your market study may show one thing, but that is not what I'm seeing on the ground. So then it's sort of, I can say, well, I don't know, like, I think maybe you should. And then we have this, hopefully polite and healthy back and forth and try to figure out what the right answer is. In terms of things like subdivisions that are ongoing for years and years and years, some subdivisions, like you've seen Perthmore, I think we're on phase 6. Some subdivisions get phased over multiple periods of time. They say phase 1, we're going to do this. Phase 2, we're going to do this. Phase 3, we're going to do this. Well, by the time we get to phase 3, the market's changed. And now they want to do something completely different. So they have to redline their plan. And then I say, okay, well, now you have to go through those studies to be sure that that's what the market wants. And how is that going to affect your traffic? And how is that going to affect your stormwater or whatever it is? I guess the point is, it really is kind of an unknown when you're looking over a long period of time. I've seen periods where people just want townhouses and that's it. Sometimes it's, I just want condos. We only need apartments. And it just sort of, you know, progresses throughout. And you just have to be open, and the developer has to be open to saying, like, every place is different. We're not Ottawa or Perth. We're not, whatever. And have that discussion and come to a resolution, or else, you end up going to the tribunal often.
Same. But, so I'm figuring out, like, the average occupancy in this region is 2.9.
Mhm.
People, and how do they figure out the mix? If the mix is needed, that we have some apartments for a family of four. The one person.
No, it's really, that's a very good question. We don't have that outlined in our zoning bylaw to say this is how many people will be in the apartment or not. But I do try to encourage that there be a variety of accessible singles, like, single units or family-sized units. Does it always happen? No. But I encourage it. Yes.
And I appreciate things have just changed again. How can you require that all these new builds not be on fossil fuels?
I can't.
How can citizens try to do that? Because I know Doug Ford has just recently gotten rid of redundancy.
Yeah.
Is there anything? This is.
Hmm.
This, because we are going to be into stranded assets. If every one of these buildings is being built on natural gas, and we know that fossil fuels are going to end within a few years, right? You're going to have buildings that are stuck with fossil fuel, natural gas to them, where people are stuck, even though they want to do it better, right?
Yep.
If they're in a rental situation, they have no capacity to change it.
Yeah, and I very much understand and appreciate your point. I think, like, I feel like maybe many of us feel like we're bashing our head against the wall, but just continual pressure on the province is probably. You're on the climate change committee?
Yeah, I think it's a complicated thing. There's many things that every year we go through, our fire department goes through, our emergency planning goes through a risk assessment, and we look at all those different things. We've tried communicating with the province. This current government doesn't want to hear what anyone has to say. So they both removed the green building standards, and they also said municipalities, you can't add any other requirements on top of the building code. So we can't say we prefer electric heat or heat pumps or anything else. So aside from lobbying your MPP or lobbying the provincial government, I'm not sure what else there is to do. Potentially for the citizens, natural gas is going to be here for decades yet, so I'm not sure it's an immediate risk. Every home and every building, every home has it. It's not going to be an overnight thing. The electrical grid can't support. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Said. Overturned. So the other thing is a lot of progress. Stop. That's what we see.
But I guess at the end of the day, as Joanna's talked about too, over the last couple of years, tools and decision making keeps getting removed from the municipal level to the provincial level. So there's really not a lot we can.
Short of lobbying the council members, the best thing I think we could do is make a motion at council and send it to AMO, and they can send it to the province. That's essentially what I think our power is, unfortunately. Yep.
Get some clarity from something with zoning.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes, it is. So zoning looks at land use. So it's divided into industrial, commercial, institutional, mixed use, hopefully eventually, here, and residential. And then residential is broken down into R1, which is essentially single family houses, R2, R3, R4, the sort of density increases. So R4 being apartments and the others are somewhere in between. Yes, so we have the zoning bylaw, the link, it will be in this presentation. There is a county official plan, there is no county zoning, so their official plan sort of mimics the provincial policy statement, then our official plan mimics both of those. And each municipality has its own zoning bylaw. They've done some stuff relating to, well, minister zoning orders have been a big thing with the province, right? Where I might say normally, I'm trying to think of an example. Buffer zones are listed in the schedules of a zoning map. Yep. So that's a good example. So we show buffer zones from the water, from wetlands, from provincially significant wetlands. And we've said development, for example, can't occur within 120 meters of a provincially significant wetland. Here's the buffer on our zoning map. And the province has walked in and said, nope, you can build within 30 meters of a provincially significant wetland. So then we have to change our zoning to shrink the buffers so there's more room for houses to be built. That's a good example. Parking minimums is town led. Generally, the province has made concessions related to parking to do with additional residential units. I'd have like basically saying I think that only requires one per unit rather than normally we'd say like 1.5 or 2. So they yes. Yeah. Those anything come from the province is like a broad brush over everybody's everything.
No.
Yes, we'll have to, if it's not, like, it'll have to be changed because our zoning's out of date. But when we get to that, we'll have to go back and look at all these 13 changes and implement the ones that apply to zoning into our zoning bylaw. Yes. That's not something that we have considered to date. Transportation, nobody online can see this, but in our official plan, we have Schedule B transportation. These are the new schedules, and that basically shows roads and the different types of roads and where they are. I would think that in the future, when we start to see a trend towards transportation, it would go in a schedule like that. No, we have not considered that yet.
Build the transportation, then they'll build the housing and where are the other way?
Well, I mean, the town's existed for a long time, but your point taken in terms of greenfields developments, should that be considered? that's a fair point. I don't believe transportation will be out here for a long, long time. Just because it's ineffective financially. Yeah. Yeah, before you're looking at bus stops and bus shelters and things that would require space. That's why we do try to put affordable housing within walking distance of, yeah, of like grocery stores and things like that. Like if someone proposed affordable housing way out in the middle of nowhere, I would probably have concerns with it. I would still, it would have to be something to consider, I guess. I don't know that I wouldn't approve it because it's affordable housing, we want it, but it's something that would go into the considerations as you're writing a planning report. How will people get to where they need to be? Perth is generally quite walkable. At like most lunches, I go out and I'll walk for half an hour. I kind of walk a quadrant of town. Would you like to see things dispersed better in terms of services throughout the town? Absolutely. That's why I think mixed use is really appropriate because you can end up with a commercial in different areas of town where people can go and have a coffee or have a grocery store, have, something that they can, where the town where I live in on the north side of Carlton Place, and there is no grocery store. I have to drive the other end of town to get my groceries. I would much rather just walk, grab a couple bags and come back, but we're not there yet. And it's the same thing for here. You just have to sort of hope and design your bylaws in such a way that it helps private owners decide to move in that direction.
Now, I stopped driving a couple of years ago, so I walk. I can walk downtown, but I can't walk up to Manor Garage to visit my friend. Can't walk up to the highway. I can't walk. A lot of places I can't walk. I have to arrange a taxi, and I was really encouraged when Lanark Transit started a bus on Friday mornings. Now they weren't on money. For $2, they have a route, established stops, but for people who can't walk too far, they'll come and pick you up at home. And they'll take you to any number of destinations they can choose, and then they bring you home. It's wonderful. It's only $2, and they must be losing a lot of money on it. And they're only so far, maybe when I'm on the bus, maybe there's 7 or 8 people, maybe only 5. I think we need to be pushing this in the future. We can't keep using more resources to put into cars to drive the roads. We need to be smarter like the Europeans are. We have a lot of them.
I mean, we have looked at and approved an active transportation plan to start looking at the process of moving forward in certain ways. I'm not the head of that project, so I can't speak articulately to it, but the town of Perth has gone in that direction and has been looking at making the town more walkable, cyclable, making those connections. And as part of the official plan, I've asked to have like a map of the trails, and then how, when things develop, where you can put trails within those developments that provide connectivity. So that's, I mean, I know it's not a great answer, but that's what I have for you right now. No, well, you could comment, it's going to the county for approval. I would have to check. I think there may be opportunity to comment to them, but I would have to check to just be sure. Yeah, and we will be starting with the zoning bylaw process shortly, so I would encourage people to weigh in on that.
For the province, mentioning some. How is the town responding to the development charges? Issue, because you rely on that to get other stuff, and so, I know there was some.
There's been talk. To the best of my knowledge, nothing has been concrete yet. You are correct. We depend significantly on development charges. I think that's definitely a concern for the town, and we're sort of discussing internally how we want to respond or work through this. The province can, we are a creature of the province. And so they just say, this is what you're doing, and whether we like it or not, that's how it is. There is talk about doing it. There's talk about development charges, lowering development charges. I suspect it's going to lead other places, but it will be Ontario wide. You can always count on me to be uplifting. I don't know, can we take questions from anybody online? I don't know if there's many. Okay, so I'm happy to take other questions or.
Ongoing sheet. They say, here's what's in process right now, and this is that.
I mean, I will be putting this up online. To be quite frank, I think sometimes the way development works is I might say, hey, developer, I need you to provide me with whatever. And the status would sit there and say, waiting on developer. And it could just sit like that for like 9 months. Or reverse, the developer provides me with something and then we have to take a look at it with the whole group. And the update is going to say, waiting on the town. And that's really, there's not going to be an awful lot more than that, but I am happy if it seems like it's helpful. I'm happy to do these sort of updates, you know, twice a year or something like that. There's lots of things that happen, like in pre-consultation, when a developer comes in pre-consultation, I am not permitted to talk about it to the public. So there's always lots of rumors going around or things that are happening, or did you see this or that? And, you know, I can't share that because say someone's proposing something that's really great. And I'm like, hey guys, this is gonna happen. And all of a sudden they bail and it doesn't happen. Then it's disappointed everyone, or it's the next guy that comes in, does something different, but everyone liked the first idea better. Like, you know, or it just doesn't work out for some reason. So at the pre-consultation stage, we don't share anything. I can only share things once I get a completed application. So I appreciate what you're saying with a status update, and I've actually just started doing that bi-weekly for council. But I think it would be not as useful as you think it might be, because it will literally just be status, waiting on this person, status, waiting on that person. status, signed a site plan agreement. Like, it's not, I don't think it's. I mean, I'll look to Michael for direction. He's my boss, but I think it might be maybe more frustrating than anything. Certainly frustrates me on a weekly basis. Sorry?
Proposed.
Right.
You see those? They really are.
Not helpful. Okay, I did try, I was thinking about doing the Google Map thing, but there's just so many pictures you want to sort of.
Who sees it? You don't know.
Yeah, no,
I think
for clarity, planners see things from up here. Because that's how we look at plans, so I apologize. I will keep that in mind next time. That is literally how I see things most of the time, so.
developments that you spoke about, the residential ones that are somewhere along the way, do you have a sense of the population increase that will result from those?
That is in the Lanark population growth study. I did have a. At last count, the infill, and this was a while ago, but at last count, the infill was somewhere around 600. But that was like like maybe about a year ago, so it'll be a little bit more. Yeah, I think I was gonna say 660. I in my head I have 660, but I wasn't sure, so we're about on the same page. Yeah. Yeah, so I think I calculated about 660. And since I calculated that, we'd had like a couple added. So yeah, like between 650 and 700 is as accurate for infill. And then we have the subdivisions, of course, on top of that. So the Perthmore Phase 6 is 94 units. And then Kaivan is what it is. So in terms of what? Right? The official plan is going to county for approval, and then we're gonna start work on the zoning bylaw amendment. So our zoning bylaw is quite old, so we're gonna do a sort of a major update to it, and then 5 years from now, we're gonna do a brand new official plan and a brand new zoning bylaw. So, yeah, we have to do, yeah, so these documents are required to be updated every 5 years. Because of the multiple policy changes that we see from the province, you have to stay current. So basically, as soon as you, in this case, as soon as you pass an official plan or a zoning bylaw, it's basically in like not compliant in the way it's going right now, which is frustrating. But anyway, that being said, yeah, the official plan is almost complete. We're working on the zoning bylaw. I'm definitely interested in doing more education sessions. I think the more people can understand about development and what we can do and what we can't do and all that, I think it's better. I would encourage anybody who's either listening or who's here, if you have a topic that you're particularly interested in, I will tailor a presentation of that because I sort of just decided to do this because I didn't know what would be interesting, but I thought this was sort of good to have an update. Because there's a lot of stuff going on. If you're paying attention to council meetings, I think what's happening is people are seeing a lot of stuff that's been approved and nothing happening, and they're wondering like, why, what's happening, you know? And so this is just sort of a high level update. There's obviously a lot more intricacies involved in every one of those projects, but that's like a lot of information, so. There. It does take forever to read. I think if there's particular topics you know that you're interested in, like if you're really interested in affordable housing, you can read the table of contents, and there is a section called affordable housing. Read that section. And then you can sort of suggest what you think would make sense. You make your comments to me. And then like between myself and the consultant, we are required to respond to those comments in some way. Like, we disagree, here's why, the province says blah, 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 or yes, great idea, we'll amend it. So I would start with the table of contents and just try to read through the sections that are of particular interest to you. And I guess if you'd like clarity on something, you can book a meeting with me. I don't have an exceptional amount of time, but even if it was like a group of people that wanted to get together and come and sit down and go through some stuff. I mean, part of my position is obviously listening to the public and going through and explaining stuff, which is why I'm taking the time to do this tonight. And I'm happy to try to make some time to go through that stuff if needed.
Because, if you don't do Facebook, how do you listen to these meetings at home?
Sorry, the council meetings or these meetings? Yeah, so Facebook, they're also, which you don't need an account for to watch our council live streams. You can just view them on the Facebook site. We're also going to start publishing them to YouTube after the fact, so you'll be able to go and watch them there. And I guess those would be the two options.
Yeah.
No.
No, on Facebook, yeah. Said.
Yeah, our understanding is that you don't need, because we've tried it without an account and have been able to get on. No. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
Post public meetings, you post when the next council meeting is, and anything you need to know in the meantime. It's not just online, because there are a lot of people who don't go online. And I don't think there are very many who go online.
Well, I guess it's up to you to help share the news with your neighbors in your building. We are starting a paper newsletter that we'll be sending out quarterly, starting in August. That'll have town events and other things. We do have billboards around town as well that have some information on there as well.
We just like it when you come to the meetings. Yeah, no, I'm just teasing, but I think points well taken. There's lots of people that don't have access.
Thank you very much.
Well, even though it wasn't a large crowd, we really appreciate your interest and your passion in the town of Perth and coming out on a beautiful night and your engagement with all the questions and everything else. And we're happy that you were here and hopefully it was helpful. This will be online Or if someone would like a paper copy, we're happy to print off the presentation too, if you'd like to share that, or if you know the people that are not online and would like a copy, we're happy to do that. We can.
There.
I can provide a copy of the presentation for sure. I think it's might not be as useful without me talking behind it, but it would give some idea. I'm happy to print off a couple copies and bring it to the library.
And it's gonna be the electronic version, that's gonna be useful for people who watch it. Whatever the other place do. So they can watch.
Yeah, this has been recorded, so it should be posted online and then people will be able to see it. Or I can print off those paper copies, which have information. It's just, obviously I talked a lot longer than what is written there, right? So it may not be as helpful.
Members of the population will head of the game would be like, so very much print media or print access. And that, I don't know how you make sure you report needs. It's an interesting idea about the library or, well, it's always been our go-to place for reference. Right, so, yeah, it's a question of. Set something up. It's more available, yeah. You know,